When The Boys first arrived on Amazon Prime Video back in 2019, it came loaded with a very specific kind of satirical fury, a gleefully vicious skewering of superhero mythology, corporate greed, and the American obsession with patriotism packaged as product. It mocked franchises. It mocked cinematic universes. It mocked the very idea that a superhero could also be a brand. And now, in perhaps the most deliciously ironic twist the show's own writers could never have scripted, The Boys is becoming exactly the thing it spent years lampooning. A full-blown, multi-series, expanding universe. And the next entry in that universe, The Boys, Mexico, just got a very, very good reception from the people who matter most. According to showrunner Eric Kripke, Amazon has received the pilot script for The Boys, Mexico, and reacted positively to what they read. That studio speak for something rare and precious in the development trenches, genuine enthusiasm. In a landscape littered with spin-offs that limp out of the gate, early momentum like this is the closest thing to a green flag a show can receive before the cameras even roll. And given the pedigree attached to this particular project, the excitement is more than warranted. The pilot script was penned by Gareth Alcocer, the writer behind DC's Blue Beetle. The 2023 superhero film celebrated not only for its comic book thrills, but for its deeply felt, culturally specific portrayal of a Mexican-American family. Alcocer brought a warmth and authenticity to that project that felt distinct from the usual superhero assembly line output. Bringing that sensibility to the grimy, blood-soaked, morally decomposed world of The Boys is an inspired collision of tones. And on paper, it could produce something truly unlike anything the franchise has delivered before. Behind the camera in the executive producer chairs sit two of Latin American cinema's most celebrated figures, Diego Luna and Gael García Bernal. The pair, longtime collaborators and co-founders of the production company La Corriente del Golfo, have spent years championing stories rooted in Mexican culture and identity. Luna, best known internationally for his role as Cassian Andor in the Star Wars universe, and Bernal, beloved for films like Y2 Mama Tambien and The Motorcycle Diaries, are not names attached to a project simply for marquee value. They are tastemakers, gatekeepers of authenticity, and their involvement signals that The Boys, Mexico, intends to be taken seriously, both as genre entertainment and as a culturally grounded story. The story itself is set to unfold after the events of The Boys Season 5, which Kripke has confirmed will be the final season of the original series. That's a crucial detail, because it means Mexico won't simply be a parallel story happening somewhere else in the world while Billy Butcher and Homelander are still tearing each other apart. It will be a sequel to whatever seismic conclusion Season 5 delivers. It will inherit the aftermath, and the aftermath promises to be enormous. Without getting into speculative spoilers for a season that hasn't aired, the original series has spent 5 years building toward a reckoning, not just between its central characters, but between the institution of VOT International and the world that enabled it. If Season 5 brings down VOT, exposes the soup program, or fundamentally alters the geopolitical landscape of a world where superpowered individuals exist, those shockwaves won't stop at the U.S. border. They'll roll south. They'll cross oceans. They'll destabilize every country where VOT has had a hand. And given the show's world building, that's most of them. Mexico, in that context, is not an arbitrary setting. It's a logical one. A nation with its own complicated relationship to power, corruption, cartel influence, and the long shadow of American corporate and political interests make for extraordinarily fertile ground when you drop a superhero mythos into it. The questions The Boys has always been asking: who watches the Watchmen? Who profits from the Protectors? Don't get simpler in that context. They get more dangerous. Imagine a world where VOT-backed supes were used as private security for interests that had nothing to do with justice, and you begin to see the kind of story Mexico could tell. One of the most tantalizing possibilities the spin-off opens up is the chance for characters from the original series to cross over. Whether that means a cameo appearance from a surviving member of the Boys' crew, a villain who escaped the carnage of Season 5, or even a supe whose story wasn't finished in the main series, The connective tissue of the universe allows for these appearances without demanding them. Kripke's track record with Gen V, which featured crossover characters handled deftly, suggests the team knows how to use familiar faces without letting them swallow the new story whole. Speaking of Gen V, the future of that series remains one of the more complicated threads in the expanding Boys universe. The college-set spin-off earned strong reviews for its darker, more politically charged take on the source material, but its trajectory was complicated by real-world circumstances surrounding some of its cast. The fate of Gen V's planned second season adds pressure to the Boys. Mexico to serve not just as a companion piece to the original, but potentially as the primary vehicle for carrying the franchise's themes and energy forward once the flagship concludes. Meanwhile, Vought Rising, the prequel series set in the 1950s and centered on a young version of the series' corporate supervillain Grace Mallory, represents another arm of the universe, one focused on history rather than forward momentum. It's a prestige piece, a period drama that promises to show how Vought's rot was baked in from the beginning. But it's the Boys, Mexico, that stands to carry the most dramatic weight of inheritance, to be what the universe becomes when it grows up and leaves home. Between Vought Rising pulling in one direction and Gen V's uncertain status pulling in another, Mexico arrives at a moment when the franchise genuinely needs a gravitational center. Something that can carry the satirical fire of the original without being simply a retread of it. Something that can go somewhere new. The combination of a Latin American setting, a writer who understands cultural specificity, and two producers who have spent careers telling stories about power and identity from outside the Hollywood mainstream makes this spin-off the most compelling bet for what the Boys universe actually becomes once its founding chapter is closed. And this brings us back to that magnificent irony. The Boys, a show built on the premise that superhero franchises are a form of capitalist propaganda designed to make consumers compliant and corporations immortal, is now, quite literally, a superhero franchise. It has spin-offs. It has prequels. It has an expanding slate of content designed to keep audiences inside the universe indefinitely. The show that once made Homelander into a symbol of corporate America's toxic mythology is now, itself, corporate America's mythology. Eric Kripke and his writers are almost certainly aware of this. The question is whether they lean into it, subvert it, or simply accept that the machine they're feeding was always going to demand more content. What makes The Boys, Mexico, potentially different from a cynical franchise cash grab is the same thing that made the original show feel different when it debuted. A specificity of vision, a commitment to using genre trappings as a lens for something real. The franchise argument is not entirely without merit, either. What The Boys has done, building a universe around the corruption of the very concept it depicts, is arguably more self-aware than anything the MCU has produced in years. If Mexico can maintain that self-awareness while delivering new characters, a new world, and a story that doesn't need the original series as a crutch, it won't just be a worthy spin-off. It could be the show that defines what this universe actually means after Homelander and Butcher are finally gone. There's also a larger cultural argument at play here. The Boys universe expanding into Latin America isn't just a geographic decision. It's a statement about whose stories get told in the superhero genre and whose don't. For decades, the Cape and Cal mythology has been almost exclusively rooted in American iconography. Moving the action to Mexico, with Mexican creators at the helm, is a genuinely radical act within that tradition. Even if the show it's attached to would be the first to mock the word radical being applied to a streaming product. As for when fans can realistically expect to see The Boys, Mexico on their screens, the timeline is still being shaped by several moving parts. First and foremost, Season 5 of The Boys will need to conclude before Amazon makes its final push on the spinoff. A green light announcement, moving from script approval to full series order, could realistically come in late 2026, assuming the pilot script review continues on its current positive trajectory. From there, production in Mexico would likely take the better part of a year, placing a potential premiere window somewhere in 2027 at the earliest, and more conservatively in 2028. That timeline isn't guaranteed. Development hell is a real place, and even beloved projects with strong scripts and powerful producers can stall for reasons that have nothing to do with quality. But the signals coming out of Amazon right now, the positive reception, the caliber of talent involved, the strategic importance of having a continuation of the universe ready before the original series fades from the cultural conversation, all point toward this being a project the streamer wants to make happen. For fans of The Boys, the wait is part of the deal. The show has never been a comfort watch. It has never been easy. It asks uncomfortable questions and delivers uncomfortable answers. And if The Boys, Mexico honors that tradition while planting its flag in entirely new soil, it may just prove that the universe it inhabits was always bigger than one country's discontents. The corruption was always global. The power was always exported. And now, finally, the story might be too. Whatever happens when the cameras eventually roll south of the border, one thing seems certain. The world of The Boys isn't done with us yet. And, judging by how Amazon responded to that pilot script, it may just be getting started.